I've bought many skateboards since I started skateboarding back in October of 2023. But from the smallest brands like Mini Logo to the bigger brands like Powell Peralta, I've noticed that a few of the brands I skate last longer than others. Some are more durable, some have better pop. Two of the most notable boards I've skated are Plan B and Primitive. I skated Plan B before I skated Primitive. I got a 7.75 for Christmas the year I started skating. I rode that board for about 3 months, and I noticed one thing about that board. It had the least amount of damage of any of the boards I had skated up to that point. Of the boards I skated during that time, I skated a Crown board, a Mini Logo board, and a Plan B board. The Crown board I had already had a few chips from the first kickflips I was doing. The Mini Logo board already had razor tail and had gotten a lot of scratches on the bottom just from me trying maybe 1 or 2 board slides. The Plan B stained deck was one of the best boards I had. The graphic was still basically intact, it had not gotten razor tail yet, and it still has decent pop to this day. The next board I skated was a Primitive board, the Paul Rodriguez. I skated an 8.125, and after 1 month of skating it already had chips on the nose. The flick on the Primitive board was actually really good. The nose shape had really good width for my kickflips and helped flick faster. The Plan B board is not as good in this area, but I learned my first kickflip on it, showing that it clearly has enough flick. By about 2 months into skating the Primitive board, it already had razor tail on both the nose and tail. I had barely done any nollie tricks by then, and I could barely even nollie shove. After skating that Primitive board, I got a Plan B board again, an 8.25. I skated that board from June of 2024 to October of 2024. By October, the Plan B board was still basically intact. It did not have much razor tail, the graphic on the bottom was pretty much destroyed, but it still has plenty of pop to this day as well. I skated that board on my trip to New York. If you've watched any of my videos before, I almost landed a backside flip on an A-frame up in New York. I also landed that front 180 off the ramp in one of my older videos. But if you notice, I don't have many clips from the Primitive boards. I ollied off a ramp at the Lakeland skate park, I ollied into a quarter pipe, but I was able to accomplish much more on the Plan B board that I got. After skating that Plan B board, I moved on to the egg shape, Primitive's Villani holofoil. This board was an 8.625, and I skated that one for a very long time. I skated it in my first Skate Park of Tampa competition, even though I didn't do very well. I was able to land a bump to ledge 50-50, which I had never done before. I liked that board so much that I bought another one from one of my friends. I was able to learn frontside flip on that board, as well as backside flip and big spin. By the end of using that board, it had razor tail and a few chips, but it was still usable. I still skate my first egg shape to this day. Through riding both of these boards, the Plan B and the Primitive, even though the Primitive ones were different, I do notice that they all have one thing in common. They don't last very long. So the question is, which one is better, Plan B or Primitive? I have reasons for both. Riding a Primitive board will give you a lot of good skating, but it won't last long enough, so if you don't have enough money to keep buying boards, I would say look to Plan B as they last longer. If you don't skate a whole lot, and maybe you only need a board once every 6 months, and you're okay on money, then Primitive will be just fine. But Plan B, I think, is better for regular skaters. While Primitive has more shapes, Plan B does tend to be more durable from my experience. One big difference I noticed on the Plan B to the Primitive was that back tails and nose slides slide better on Primitive than on Plan B. Obviously, this can be solved with a little bit of wax. If you don't have wax or don't always have wax handy, it might be good to get a Primitive board as it slides a little bit better. Primitive has many pro skaters such as Giovanni Viana and one of my favorites, Felipe Mota, as well as Paul Rodriguez. There are also pros to skate Plan B such as Chris Joslin, Tommy Finn, and Felipe Gustavo. This shows that both brands are reputable, and many pros like both. One last point I'd like to make about both brands is that Primitive tends to have more designs. If you look at their websites, they have many different designs for all different kinds of skaters. They have minimal designs such as their name on the bottom of the board with the simple print, and complex designs such as many of Paul Rodriguez's boards. They also have the holofoil designs, which are some of my favorite. Plan B doesn't really have that. At the end of the day, we know that both of these brands are great.
What?
At the end of the day, we know both of these brands are great. It really just comes down to personal preference. So which one did you choose? Primitive or Plan B?